Epicenter Entertainment LLC, WrestlingEpicenter.com, and everybody associated with our company would like to dedicate this edition of Interactive Wrestling Radio to the memories of Brad Armstrong and Buddy Roberts.
Yo, Monkey, it's me. It's DDP. And you're listening to the Interactive Radio. Stay tuned and feel the bang.
Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Interactive Wrestling Radio right here on WrestlingEpicenter.com. It is James Walsh, joined as always by Mr. Patrick Kelly.
What's up? December 1st.
What's up? Yeah. I am...
Get your Advent calendars out.
Yeah. The Advent calendars are out. We have two of them, as a matter of fact, in this house, and that's a great idea. Let's give kids chocolate first thing in the morning. That's the way to start the day.
That's the way to start the Christmas season, buddy.
Holy God. By the way, I am the 100% crown champion of best tag team naming radio show host on the planet.
Yes, you were just telling me this off the air. Would you like to explain or tell me how TNA is stealing ideas from you, apparently?
They're not stealing them. I asked them to use it, and they did. Here's what happened. About 3 weeks ago, Christopher Daniels was cutting one of his promos on AJ because the angle with him and AJ seems to never end. But apparently it's going to this Sunday, next Sunday, anyway, at the pay-per-view. And he said that people say that he's a bad influence on AJ Styles and all that stuff. And I thought, you know what? For the better part of a year, Taz and Daniels have been teaming up and have not had a tag name. Now, in the 80s, there was a tag team called Bad Company, which was Pat Tanaka and Paul Diamond in the AWA. And
well, oddly enough, ended up being tag partners in Orient Express, correct?
Yep, that's correct. Yep, Diamond Dallas Page was their manager at the time. He wasn't a wrestler yet because people didn't think he could work, and he ended up being the best worker of all three of those guys. But anyway, going back to my point, I thought, you know what, that's a great tag name, and I posted an editorial about it on the website. I posted a Facebook update about it. I even sent Dixie Carter and TNA Wrestling's, I keep saying MySpace, like anybody uses MySpace anymore, Facebook account. I said, look, here's a great tag name. Use it. I don't care if you use it. You don't have to pay me anything. Just use it. It's a great name. And last night, during their match, lo and behold, Mike Tenay comes out with a comment saying, they were introduced as Kaz and Christopher Daniels, but they've told us that they now want to be called Bad Influence. And I thought, yeah!
Which is better than the name that they kind of gave themselves, which is the World Tag Team Champions of the World, which they can't use now because they're not the champions.
Bad Influence is a good name, and they can take that to use different things. Like once the feud with AJ's over, they could get in somebody else.
Yeah, right, like that'll ever end.
What's that again?
Yeah, right, like that'll ever end. Like they're saying Final Resolution one last time. I'm like, yeah, bullshit.
Well, to be honest, when I heard them say Bad Company, I actually stood up and threw a punch in the air and spun around on my heels. I was so excited that they actually used it. So anyway, that's my little story. Bad news. Before we get to the Stevie Richards interview, by the way, Stevie will be joining us. Michael Manna, a.k.a. Stevie Richards, will be joining us in just a few moments. And an interview that we recorded on Tuesday night. We'll finish up our wrestling talk after that interview when Nick Knoll joins us.
Nick Knoll will be joining us. Yep.
But we address the fact that we have unfortunately had 2 losses since our last show. That was Brad Armstrong from the legendary Armstrong family, brother of Road Dogg and son of Bullet Bob, passed away, and I think he was only 51 years old. And just yesterday we lost from the fabulous Freebirds. Buddy Roberts passed away at the age of 67 after a long battle with throat cancer. So, lump in the throat kind of day for us wrestling fans. 2 guys gone before their time, and we wish their families our heartfelt condolences, and this show is in dedication of them. And I can't think of a better interview to dedicate to them because Stevie Richards really does deliver a great interview here tonight.
Yes, he does. And much to my surprise, I thought we'd had him on the show before, but you told me right before we signed on with him that we had not. We had never had Stevie Richards on before, and that kind of took me by surprise. So it was really good to have him on. He's a really cool guy.
Absolutely.
As you would expect watching him on TV.
Yeah, he's kind of down to earth, and he kind of implies on this that he wasn't the coolest kid in school either, and it's like, well, that's just going to make you really fit in with us wrestling fans here online. So, but you know, when you really think about it, we had every member now of Right to Censor on. We had Ivory, we had Bull Buchanan. We haven't had Godfather, so that's the only one we haven't had on. But Stevie's been on.
We've had Val Venus.
We had Val Venus on as well. I forgot he was even part of that.
We did. Who comes up in this interview?
Yes, he
and
does.
I totally didn't mean that as a double entendre, but okay.
Oh, you're saying he comes up. And then there's, and we had every member except the Blue Meanie of the BWO, which I guess means we only have one other member of the BWO. But we've had a lot of people that have worked with Stevie over the years on. Raven's been on, Francine's been on. We've had just so many people that have been colleagues of him that I think people just thought we did. And like he says, he doesn't do many wrestling interviews. So I honestly did consider it an honor and a treat that he agreed to join us. So
right.
Hope everybody enjoys this interview here on WrestlingEpicenter.com. And be sure to stay tuned right after the interview for our usual wrestling segment.
Hi, this is Ivory from WWE, and you're listening to the Interactive Interview.
And welcome back to the Interactive Interview right here on WrestlingEpicenter.com. Joining us on the Newsmaker line is somebody who, in over 10 years of doing the show, has not ever joined us, despite most of his co-workers having joined us at some point or another. It's an honor to have on Michael Manna, but on the wrestling circuit is better known as Stevie Richards. Michael, are you with us?
Oh, thank you. I'm here. Thank you for finally having me on. I don't normally do wrestling interviews, so don't take any personal offense to it.
I don't take any personal offense, and you know what? I consider it an honor and a privilege that you agreed to do mine.
Yeah, not a problem at all. I mean, I've seen all the people you guys have interviewed, and I've seen the way you've done it, and, you know, it's definitely not a problem to be on.
Well, I told you on Facebook, and I want to say it here, I think the last time I spoke to you was in 95 or 96 when I was ordering from the ECW catalog, and I wasn't sure if it was you or not until I watched the WWE DVD that they put out where you said that you were doing that. And I thought, you know what, that kind of confirms what I suspected all along, that it very well could have been you. I ordered Extreme Warfare from, so there you go.
Yeah, Gabe Sapolsky and I used to take orders, ticket orders, and do the fan line and everything. You know, Paul and Todd were nice enough to give me a job outside of the weekends of wrestling. So 7 days a week, I was immersed in the ECW lifestyle. Not the other stuff though. Not the late night stuff or any of the partying. That was just the work part.
Very cool, very cool. Now you're fresh off of a Black Friday appearance on Fox and Friends on the Fox News Network, and I was surprised that they referred to you as their tech guru. Basically, how did this come about, and how did you enjoy your appearance on Fox and Friends?
I enjoyed it immensely. I was a little bit nervous. You know, it's not normal for me to be on TV as Michael Manna, as myself. That was actually the first time I'd ever done anything under my real name without the Stevie Richards personality. But my PR firm, MediaProductions.tv, eclectic, I can't say eclectic media, but if you go to MediaProductions.tv, they represent DDP. They represent a whole slew of people. And, I mean, I've only been with them for about a month, and they did a great job. I've been doing a lot of radio appearances. I did the Fox and Friends first, and might have other local TV down here in Florida. So I have to give them a shout-out. And if anybody who wants a PR firm, they have been just so awesome. I can't be more grateful for all the work they've done.
Absolutely. And we were talking off air, not you and I, but Patrick and I, and we looked it up because we couldn't figure out how long you were employed with WWE, because we knew it was a long time, but we didn't know it lasted as long as it did. Basically, how did you end up finding the time with the WWE contract to get educated in all the things that you're currently doing?
Oh, that's always been a passion of mine. I've had 3 passions in my life, 4 counting God, but we won't get into that. But the three things that I do actively are technology, fitness, and wrestling in no particular order. The best part about that is it's always changing. Sometimes wrestling doesn't seem to change, but the other 2 things always change. And I enjoy doing it all, and I enjoy being creative in all 3 of those. So I always had a aptitude for computers, for technology, even dating back to grade school and high school. So, the wrestling came kind of well after my foundation with technology.
Very cool, very cool. And we were talking off air again, and we were talking about, some of the, we had AJ Styles on a long time ago, and it became a topic because I've been looking towards getting a new video game system. I'm old school. I can't do all this Kinect and Wii stuff. I need a controller in my hand. And we ended up talking on our Facebook page and had a big discussion about it. You're in what AJ Styles and myself consider to be the best wrestling game ever, which is WWF at the time, No Mercy. What is your opinion of the best wrestling game of all time?
Best wrestling game of all time is probably a tie between New Japan 4 and Giant Graham 2000 for the Dreamcast. Dreamcast. I mean, wow. The Giant Graham 2000, which is the All Japan roster, had the most intuitive control system. You would literally have to move the controller down, push a guy down, and pull him in for a pile driver or a power bomb. And it was really, AJ and I have always had that discussion about No Mercy, which I'm in the game, but I still feel like it's second to the 2 Japanese games for Dreamcast.
Wow, very cool, very cool.
Well, one thing that I wanted to ask you about, with all your knowledge in technology and in business, are those aspects, those parts of your life, are those something that you wanted to incorporate into wrestling at some point, maybe as a promoter or somebody who works behind the scenes?
No, absolutely not. I mean, I've always learned a lot about production and things in the backstage area, but I never wanted to bring a character on the TV that had to do with technology or social media. I mean, Zack Ryder's done an awesome job with that, but if anything else in social media, especially if you put it, like, eventually I know for a fact if I put myself out there enough, and it's already started to happen, you're going to have all the negative people come in, and you're going to have the haters, and it really, you bring on the double-edged sword of, hey, social media's exposure and everything's great, but then these people, just kind of can't have a good time and go along with the program. They don't like that. But I look back at what, Terry Taylor, who's like a father to me and taught me so much about this business and about life. I watched him with the, I can't even remember the...
Tailor-Made Man, perhaps?
Tailor-Made Man, but Alexandria York, they used a computer system for her stable to basically scout the talent and all that. I mean, it's ridiculous. Come on.
And then they ultimately used it as a Paul Lee weapon. Used it as the laptop as the heavy weapon to clobber somebody over the head with. So
that's a very expensive foreign object.
These days it is. I don't know back then. But again, I guess those days would probably be like an Apple IIe computer, so it probably would have killed them if they would have hit them with it.
Yeah, well, you know what? No, I'm not hitting anybody with my right display MacBook Pro. Believe me, I'm not even touching it. That thing doesn't even leave the house half the time.
Well, one of the companies that you're currently doing events for is Extreme Reunion, Extreme Rising, and you're working with those guys. And are you surprised that in the year 2012, I don't want to call it nostalgia because we had Shane on, and Shane Douglas has tried to stifle that. He doesn't necessarily want it to be considered nostalgia, but there is absolutely a nostalgia aspect of it. Are you surprised by the still in 2012 nostalgia aspect people have towards what ECW once was?
Yeah, there's 2 different ways to look at that. The nostalgia thing can be a really feel-good thing and can be something that can be positive, but it also might be an indication of what's missing from the business, and that's something that people always go back to ECW, or that extreme type of wrestling, as their security blanket whenever they feel like there's something lacking with the stuff they're seeing on TV and pay-per-view. Do you guys agree with that? I mean, that's why I look at it. Like, they're yearning for something like that, and they keep going back. I mean, there's a market for it. It's great because it gives me work and other guys work, but I just feel like the fans are wanting something different, and they're not getting it right now.
I felt that. I didn't.
Oh yeah, we talk about that on the show almost every week, right?
We do. The first time you guys did an ECW reunion. Shane did one, Hardcore Homecoming, and then you guys did it in WWE with the One Night Stand. I almost blanked on it.
Yeah.
You know, the first time that you guys did it, it was fine. I guess when they created the brand of ECW, which had virtually nothing to do with the original ECW and and everything like that, then I kind of felt that way. And, you know, even though TNA did a tasteful job of it when they did their pay-per-view, it kind of just felt like, you know, I've kind of seen this already kind of thing. That's the way I felt about it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it could be people could like that. The Extreme Rising stuff has done very well as far as the crowds, except for that one crowd in Corona, New York. But they were a very hot crowd. It was like an ECW crowd, so it didn't matter. There weren't a lot of people there. It was still a lot of energy, and we drew well at the Philly Armory both times, especially the first time. And just this recent Pittsburgh pay-per-view drew a really good crowd too, and they were very loud and into everything. I see it as a positive. And the thing with nostalgia is, I mean, this is something with Shane. I mean, this is a point of contention with guys like him and Raven, which everybody who saw the video, that I have, you know, I just have a difference of viewpoint in those two guys about what this is supposed to be and about what life in general is supposed to be. I think what I do is I always look forward. I always try to be in the best shape every time I go out there. I always try to entertain and perform at a high level. And, you know, Shane and I have a difference of opinion that I think just by the eye test, as they say in the NFL, the eye test shows me that he is not, you know, he is not trying to move forward. He's still living in the past. When you wear a shirt in the ring, you should not get in the ring. That's my opinion. Not being mean, because Shane and I are friends, but like I said in many interviews, this is not, you know, this is not the pro wrestling friendship. This is the pro wrestling business, and you want to make money, and you know that's kind of an embarrassment in my opinion.
That's another thing we've talked about on this show, actually.
Yeah, as much as I love Shane Douglas, and I have told him on air, and I'll tell you, I think that he was amongst the hottest things in the business in '98. We've discussed ad nauseum on this show if he should still be in the ring wrestling, and obviously he's gone back and forth on it himself with varying YouTube videos that he's put up. So obviously that's something that's on everybody's mind, I think, regarding Shane Douglas.
It's not my opinion. He's the promoter. He's the boss.
Exactly.
He put himself in the ring. As long as he books me and lets me have an avenue to demonstrate what it's supposed to be like and how you're supposed to present yourself in the ring and what kind of matches you're supposed to have, I can only handle my own match and be responsible for that. Absolutely.
Now, when you did your Fox and Friends appearance, they didn't really mention that you were Stevie Richards. They kind of talked about you being their tech guru, Michael Manna. And was that something done by design? Are you trying to... Is Stevie a different person than Michael, or is Michael a different person than Stevie?
I don't think Michael walks around with Daisy Dukes in a half shirt or these, you know, pleather white tights going to Publix. But no, I was surprised that Fox and Friends didn't bring that up because, you know, it's an interesting twist. You got a guy that looks like I don't fit the mold of anything, really. You know, the way I act and one of my interests don't fit in wrestling. And the way I look and present myself and what I like to do outside of the technology doesn't fit in that. So I think that's why they wanted me. But during the show, I was pleasantly surprised that they didn't bring it up. Because when I started the T4 show, I could have easily said WWE superstar Stevie Richards, and I probably would have got a lot of product, probably would have got a little bit of a jump start in 2007. But I really wanted to succeed or fail on its own with this guy, Michael Manna, that nobody ever heard of in the show, the T4 show, which what the hell does T4 stand for, you know? I wanted to get to stand and fall on my work, on Colm's work, and everybody behind the scenes.
You want to clear that up, by the way. We were talking about that. My wife and I were talking about that. She, by the way, is a huge fan of yours.
Okay.
She wanted, what is the T4? What does it stand for? I've seen the show, but what does T4 stand for?
It stands for Tech Today, Tech Tomorrow. So 4 T's
there you
put
go.
Together like that. I wanted to be I love Apple stuff. I love Mac stuff. I like Android stuff too, Windows, all that stuff. Love video games, all that stuff. Love, even technology and fitness. But I was trying to figure out what do I do? Do I have this little niche here or there or whatever? And I just came up with that name, and I thought it just kind of, nobody knows what it stands for, but kind of a catchy brand, I hope.
There you go, absolutely. And Patrick and I were talking about your best run in wrestling and off the air. And between you and I, my favorite one of yours was the first ECW run. I love the goofy Stevie. I love when you're running around in the ocean, remembering things like the purple haze when he came out of the ocean and things like that with Raven.
Yeah.
But, his favorite was Right to Censor. What was your favorite incarnation of the Stevie Richards character?
Stevie Night Heat. Stevie Night Heat was the point where I was mentally, emotionally, and physically mature enough as far as my fitness level, my in-ring work, psychology, all that stuff came together for me to actually enjoy what I was doing. And I had full creativity on Stevie Night Heat because WWE never watched. Never watched the program. The McMahons, nobody watched it. They didn't know about it for 6 or 7 months. And Al Snow, myself, Coach, Gold Dust, Maven, everybody, it was like ECW. Everybody came and said, hey, man, can I try this out? They were asking me like I was booking the show for real. Hey, man, I want to try this tonight. Is that okay? I'm like, yeah, sure, why the hell not? I don't care. I can't. You're not going to get in trouble with me if you do it wrong. But nobody watched the show, and we all had a freedom to create something really cool and fun. And I just, it still befuddles me. I'm walking around with Stevie Night Heat tights, and they don't know that I took over the show.
Did you find a lot of that there was a little bit of a disconnect between the guys that weren't the marquee names and the guys that were, the workhorse?
Well, the wrestlers knew, but the office didn't know. The people in charge, people that produced the show, and other people, I don't know how it slipped through the cracks. And let's face it, these people write and produce TV. They're not just coming in and booking a television show and then going home and hanging out for the week. I mean, they're spending 8 to 10, 12, 15, 16 hours a day, writing and producing wrestling. So, I mean, I'm sure they're just like, it's all white noise after so long, and they just got to really concentrate on Raw and SmackDown, and that's about it. So I can see how that could happen, but not for 6 or 7 months. That's still odd to me.
Actually, it's funny. I just watched the CM Punk DVD, and he talked about how because he was on SmackDown for so long, he was actually able to get away with a lot more in terms of what he did creatively because they didn't pay as much attention to SmackDown as they do Raw. So obviously that's still there to some degree.
Yeah, that stinks because that's SmackDown's a really good show, and so is Raw. I mean, I don't know why. It's weird. It's weird how there's kind of rivalries in between companies or in between brands or in between whatever. I mean, the guys should all kind of be together like it used to be, even though there's tons of territories. I don't think anybody really, put down another territory because they always knew they'd have to go to that territory eventually. Nobody stayed in the place, like in my case, for 9 years in WWE. They would move on after 6 months. So.
Exactly. You were there for a long time, and, that's a long time to be a WWE employee, especially if you're not, you did good for yourself. It's not an insult, but if you're not, the main event, a lot of guys like that don't last there that long. So that's got to be a feather in your cap that you did stay in WWE on the number one company for as long as you did.
Yeah, I didn't. I just always contributed, not just in the wrestling was actually a small part. I would do stuff like I trained Shane McMahon for his match against Shawn Michaels on Saturday Night's Main Event. I would contribute by going to OVW and other developmental stuff. I would work sometimes indie shows and take a look at talent for the company. That's really what I liked. I liked the fact that I could be that utility guy and really contribute any way I can because it's all money the same anyway. So I just wanted to try to be there as long as I could. And, when you go into a company, I knew in my mind the day I signed with WWE, it's a countdown to when you get released. Nobody really has a job for life in wrestling.
That's a good way of thinking about it. Yeah, that's.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that because I've often felt that the position that you had where, the guy that goes on the road and checks out talent and helps out with other aspects of the show and isn't necessarily the big-name star but helps out in other ways, I've always felt like that's kind of an underappreciated role in wrestling and a very underrated one. And, is there anybody else in the business that you see as kind of that guy, just a really strong helper that, again, not the big marquee name, but somebody that really helps hold up the ship in other ways?
Well, Val Venus was definitely a candidate right up there, even more so than me, to be a guy that could work with anybody. And he had such a great look. He was a big guy, and he did all the WWE style, and he can also do Japan, or strong style stuff. But I mean, you're talking about a current day guy. Wow, I wouldn't even begin to be able to guess, because I'm not behind the scenes, so I don't know who's that guy working with everybody on house shows. Who's that guy going to FCW or NXT and working with everybody? I'm not sure who that is today. It's kind of like it's a guy who doesn't have the exposure, for me to know. Just like me, you'd be like, oh, Stevie's off TV. I guess he's somewhere, right?
Good point. Now, you're a guy, one of the rare guys who worked ECW at its height. You worked WCW, albeit briefly. You worked WWE. You worked even TNA. What is your opinion of the current wrestling scene? And having been to TNA, what do you think of what they're doing? And, might there ever be a time that TNA will step up to the plate and be able to handle the load that they were trying to handle about 2 years ago when they went Monday night?
This is that loaded question from one of my previous interviews, isn't it? About TNA.
Uh-oh.
I just, I do not watch what I would say is a satisfactory amount of the product to know. I'm very much probably in a point where a lot of guys are. When I do my wrestling matches, say I got my match against Luke Hawks, December 29th in the second round of the championship tournament. I watch the old wrestling. I go on YouTube, and I can't believe they have a full Lou Thesz match on YouTube. I just think that's insane. Yeah, I'll watch old NWA, old WWE, which was WWF. I'll watch WCW. I watch the older stuff, especially Memphis and things like that, to really learn, because that stuff was awesome, and it still, holds a special place in my heart. And I just don't have I don't know. I'd really rather watch football on Monday night than Raw. Is that bad?
You know what? I do the same thing. I set up my DVD recorder. I watch Raw and fast forward, and I know that's disrespectful to some of the guys in the ring, but I just can't feign an interest in some of it. So I do. I watch the football game, and I catch Raw in whatever you want to call that, in abbreviated fashion.
Yeah. Well, it's no disrespect on the roster, no disrespect on anybody who puts either product together. I have a lot of friends in both companies. It's just my entertainment choice. What's funny is talking about, and this will probably be the headline on one of the internet sites. I love when they do that. I never understood, like, the wrestling fans are so loyal, sometimes to their own, fault. The wrestling fans will get on, and, I know that they make comments and stuff, because they did it when I was wrestling full-time on WWE, and, the company used to look at sometimes what the fans said, and I'm sure they still do it, probably worse, but they talk about how they don't like the product, how they feel it's boring, or whatever adjective they use, right? Am I wrong?
Right. I think you're going exactly where I go all the time, but continue.
Okay. So they don't. So what they're saying is they're not satisfied with the products or the product, whichever product they watch. They are not satisfied with this particular type of entertainment, right? And they haven't been for a long time.
Right.
Then why do you continue to watch the show?
You try to think about that. If you didn't like a sitcom, eventually, for example, 2.5 Men, I don't like the new episodes of that, so I don't watch it. So why do people who claim to be wrestling fans just sit there and bitch and moan about a product? If you like it, watch it. If you don't.
So it's not me putting them down. It's me actually putting them over, because they are loyal to their own fault. They're the most loyal fans there are. They really are. They're the most loyal entertainment and sports fans that you'll ever have, because these people will talk about, oh my God, this thing's so bad, but I'm holding out hope that it'll get better by watching it and giving it ratings, or buying it and giving them a pay-per-view revenue. I never understood. Why do you torture yourself?
It's the same reason I get a bowl of popcorn and watch the Arizona Cardinals every Sunday. Right. It's got to be better than last week. No, I'm just kidding. But
the headline's going to say, Stevie Richards asked the fans, why do you torture yourself? That's going to be the headline on Lords of Pain.
Well, there you go. And you know what? You and I do the same thing. I have floor-to-ceiling shelving in my loft in my house. I have a nice house. I'm not I'm not a scumbag. I have floor-to-ceiling shelving in my house with videotapes and DVDs of wrestling, and whenever I watch a show that's so bad, like I'll say it, last week's Raw was so bad that I kind of was like, oh my God, what am I doing watching this? I pop in an old tape that reminds me why I love this stuff in the first place, and that's what I have to do to kind of get by sometimes.
Yeah, well, first of all, you can be a scumbag and have a really nice house. I've seen a lot of guys. I know a lot of people that are scumbags with really big houses. There's nothing wrong with that. That's nostalgia. That's why ECW and Extreme Rising right now is very popular, because those guys have DVDs or back then VHS tapes of Stevie Richards, the Sandman, Raven, Shane Douglas, all these guys, and they're like, man, I'm going to go buy a ticket to see these guys. Now, this is a segue into my feelings about that. Mm-hmm. I want somebody, when they go to that Extreme Rising show and see Stevie Richards, say, oh, my God, this isn't the same person, but in a good way. Like, this guy's in better shape than I saw when he had the mullet and the Daisy Dukes. This guy has improved himself. He's worked hard.
In the winger belly shirt, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Now he can still wear the half shirt and not embarrass himself. Or in Raven's case, it turns into a half shirt after so long. It's not even meant to be that way. But I digress. I'm looking at if there's one person in that audience, if that's the guy that said, man, I bought a ticket to see Stevie Richards wrestle, and he exceeded my expectations, and I got my money's worth, then that's what I feel. I feel like my responsibility is to the fan, or fans that might come to see me.
Absolutely. And I promise I'm going to let you go after my last question. I'll ask Patrick if he has one. But my question is, with everything that you have, you went to the Stanford School of Broadcasting. In fact, I think you've instructed there as well. With every oar that you have in the water, where does wrestling fall? Do you still love doing it? Is it something that you can still consider that is what you do, or are you a tech guy who's just can't hang up the boots just yet?
Well, I mean, as long as I have a skill, especially in this economy, I'm going to try to make money at whatever skills I have. The thing with wrestling is a weird question because it's a subjective business. It has no bearing on, it's not like they're saying you throw passes out there and the NFL's calling, oh, my God, this guy can throw like 80 yards. It's crazy. It's a very subjective, whoever thinks I might have talent, then that might happen. The call's not coming right now, and I'm not waiting for the call either. I'm going to still move on with my life, and I'm going to try to make a positive, productive life and a profitable one, hopefully. So too many guys do that. Too many guys wait for the call, and it's a torturous thing because it may never come. And I assume every day. I don't even think about if it'll come or not. I just assume, okay, well, my life's going on. I had a great opportunity.
You're making me think back to Beyond the Mat and Dennis Stamp when you say waiting for the call to come.
I'm not. Well, me and Danny Doring always. So we used to send each other videos of us on trampolines with dumbbells, waiting for the call. When we didn't get booked in WWE. That was also Unbooked Catering, which they were very famous around 4 p.m. Me and Danny Doring were a big part of Unbooked Catering. It was very delicious.
Awesome.
Patrick, did you have any final questions for Steve? I don't know what to call you, Steve.
No last questions. No last questions. Just thank you so much for your time. This was a lot of fun. Really enjoyed it.
Hi, I appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity to have me on. Both names are real. Michael's my first name. Steven's my middle name. So either one is true.
Cool. Where did Richards come from?
Awesome.
Yeah, that's a good question. You know what? I knew even at 19, I said, man, everybody is laughing at me for wanting to be a wrestler. I go, I am not going to give people another reason to snicker or laugh at me, so I'm going to pick something that seems like a real name. And so I'm not going to be like the Jackhammer or something, people go, what, is that your real name, idiot?
That's a good point. We interviewed a guy called Jesse the Jackhammer, and yeah, I get you.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I really appreciate you spending this much time with me. In all honesty, I do think that you have a talent. I don't know about the call because that's not my call to make, but I appreciate you spending this much time with us, man. You entertain me as Big Stevie Cool, and you entertain me in Right to Censor, and I've always loved you, man. You're a great performer, and thanks again for spending this much time with you. I really do appreciate it.
No problem. I'm not done yet. Cool. I appreciate it. The interactive interview. Okay.
That's me.
Hey, you've got Terry Funk here, and you're listening to the Interactive Interview.
Hey, everybody out there, this is the franchise, Shane Douglas, telling you that when you want the lowdown, the best, the very bottom line of professional wrestling information, you got to listen right here. Interactive Interview.
This is Missy Hyatt, and you're listening to the Interactive Interview.
You know, every once in a while we have a guest on who complements our previous interviews, and for about 2 or 3 days I walk around the house like the king of the world, and Stevie Richards did that, and I walked around the house like the king of the world. We can't thank you enough, Stevie Richards, for joining us on this interview, and welcome back to Interactive Wrestling Radio, featuring the Interactive Interview right here on WrestlingEpicenter.com. It's James Walsh, joined again by Mr. Patrick Kelly.
Howdy, howdy.
And conspicuous by his absence, much like Al Snow on Impact, joining us now is Mr. Nick Knoll.
Yeah. Well, it happens, ladies and gentlemen, if you're not friends with us on Facebook, there is very little to no organization on this show. So I've all day and all week basically have been sending messages to James and Patrick saying, hey, let's set up the show, let's confirm a time. And pretty much all week it was, okay, yeah, let's do it. Then, as I'm doing other things, there's a message posted on my wall by James. Hey, I'm not going to be able to do it very late tonight. Do you want to do this early? Don't blame me.
I wish I could say that was untrue, but unfortunately it's 100% accurate.
Yes.
I was just going to blame it on the Aces and Eights, because I'm pretty sure they're the ones that took out Al Snow. So,
well,
just blame them for everything.
Yep.
Yeah, well, they changed my clocks. They set my clocks an hour fast.
The good news about the Aces and Eights is now TNA has some fine, upstanding young men like Garrett Bischoff and Wes Briscoe who are apparently willing to step up and fight these guys. That's the kind of example of what you need in the wrestling business, is good young kids that know the business inside and out with their head on their shoulders.
Right. That's what we need more of in this wrestling business. We need more second-generation wrestlers where daddy gets them their job.
Yeah.
Hey. We need more Cody Rhodes and Ortons, and we need more. Who else do we need? Who else is out there?
Well, some of them are good. It's not that all of them are bad. It's just that, we every now and then we get an Eric Watts.
Yeah, or you know what? Either Jimmy Snuka's kids.
You know what? I'm going to say this. Eric Watts gets a bum rap because it wasn't his fault. Same with David Flair.
Okay, you know what?
David Flair was a really bad one. David Flair definitely was a really bad one.
All right, you know what?
Reed Flair would be a bad one, too, but he can't keep his ass out of rehab.
Okay, let's stop it. I'm going to agree with all those points. Eric Watts, unfortunately, was thrown in a wrestling ring with less than 30 days of training. Of course, he screwed up. And you know what? I even agree with David Flair. He had no training. But let's actually get on topic because we have some big things we want to talk about. Unfortunately, we have to start with the story that caught James's attention and thus will dominate the conversation because it's what James wants to talk about.
Well, I was going to say that the second generation thing would be a tie-in to the Shield because they have whose son is it that's in the Shield?
He's what? Well, all right. The Shield is
Sneaker's son, right?
Roman Reigns, who is the brother of Rosie, and I guess the question is, who is Rosie's father?
I think they said Zika.
Yeah. Well, he's got. I'm just going to say this about the Shield. It is a case of two guys with superstar potential. One who is by far the best promo cutter I've seen on the independent circuit in years. The other one, the last real hot act to come out of Ring of Honor. And then you have the other, who is not ready, has very boring, bland matchups, and apparently will be the one that gets the big push.
I don't know about that. I mean, well, it's still in the early stages. We don't really know what their plan is for these guys. I'll be honest, I was not impressed with the interview segment. And I did expect a little bit more out of Ambrose because he is good with promos. I was kind of like, kind of bland. I don't know. And
problem is now
again,
that
it's still in very it's still in very early stages. So I'm still interested in seeing where they go with it. I am high on Tyler Black, Seth Rollins. I thought he was the last really hot prospect to come out of Ring of Honor. So hopefully they've got a good plan for these guys.
The problem with Ambrose is he is one of the guys that has thrived for years as a promo cutter, basically talking about whatever he wants to talk about. I mean, go watch this guy's promos for Combat Zone Wrestling, for Dragon Gate, for the promo I'll say set it off, which was the Come At Me Jake promo in the HWA, which was where he really transformed his character. This guy has tons of potential. The problem is now you're giving a guy with a great mind who is used to speaking how he wants to speak, and you're handing him a script. And it's either going to always take away from him, or what you hope happens is he gets used to it, or they say, okay, you have potential, here's what we want you to get over, but say it in your words.
Yeah.
My problem is that the way it kind of came off, at least the way I read the body language at the end of the night, is Reigns kind of came off as the leader and the one that did the most damage to Ryback. And I watch NXT with pretty much every week for the past month. They are going nuts trying to convince you this guy is The Rock. They're going, he is the blue chipper. He is the third-generation superstar. I swear to God, this guy they're convinced is the next big one because apparently he at one point had a NFL contract of some kind. And that really worries me. They're going to put him and Ryback in matches, and it's going to be the guy who's only been wrestling 2 years versus the guy that's been wrestling 8 years and only knows 3 moves.
Yeah, I mean, if I were going to have a guy like that in the group, I would peg him as the muscle. And there's nothing wrong with having a big burly guy backing up the real talent of the group. I mean, but if they push him to the top, I don't know if that would be the wise move. Again, I've seen so little of him, I don't really know that much about him. He's the one I know the least of the three.
Yeah, well,
so
if they wanted a guy, a second-generation star in the group, they have the perfect opportunity, and it's Richie Steamboat. And I know people are going to say...
He, like his dad, though, can you turn him heel?
You know what? I think he's going to make a better heel than he makes a baby face.
Really?
There's something about him that screams, I'm a heel. He's doing good. He has a feud with Cash Stono, Chris Hero going on right now. But I'm thinking, you know what? Turn this guy heel. Have him, if I were looking at NXT, you know what I would have done? I would have had him come out, put the NXT title on Seth Rollins, and then drop him on his fucking head and say, you don't deserve it, I do. There's something about this guy that screams, I'm a heel.
Oh, wow.
I mean, look, he is not his father. He's a lot bigger than his father was. He moves a little bit differently than his dad, and I don't mean this in a bad way at all. Because, you know what, I posted on Facebook. If there's one bit of advice I would give second-generation wrestlers, it's be your own person. Don't just try to be a clone of your father or your grandfather, because all you'll come off as is a clone of your father and grandfather. Randy Orton may not be my favorite wrestler, but you know what? I give the kid a lot of credit for not putting on a cowboy hat and a fake cast.
Oh, what about, that was pretty much the downfall of Ted DiBiase Jr. when they tried to turn him into his dad.
Yeah. Well, so my feelings on the Shield gimmick overall is, one, I'm excited to see at least 2 guys that I really like coming up to the main roster with a big push. And I'm hopeful this will get people watching NXT because that is, as far as I'm concerned, the best show that WWE does every week.
When did they come on? I don't see any promotion for it or anything.
It's not on TV except for on Hulu Plus. I find it through Daily Motion, and I will regularly post the link to it when I'm watching it on our Facebook page. And I'm telling you, people, I mean, I'm not going to go so far as say, well, if they put this on TV, it would draw 5.0 and outdraw Raw, because it's got a very old-school style to it. But I'll say this. It's kind of what Jim Cornette wants Ring of Honor to be, but keeps falling short with.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so
okay.
Definitely check out NXT. I'm hopeful that they don't blow this thing with the Shield. There are rumors that they might call up more guys, and I really hope they don't do that for the group, because I'm afraid that would turn it into Nexus 2.0 or really Nexus 7.0, where they just kept bringing in new guys all the time, and you kind of lost. You lost that edge that made it cool when it first started.
Right. And they said on Raw this week that it wasn't going to be the Nexus, so hopefully they stick to that.
Yeah, please stick to that, because Nexus had a great beginning, and then, man, did it go flat, and man, did they beat that horse to death.
Oh, yeah. I was at by SummerSlam. Once Cena beat them, it was like, well, all right.
Yeah. Yes, Cena beats them, and then it's like, we're still here, and we're still feuding with John Cena.
Which, you know, I understand Cena has to win 95% of his matches, but, you know, still your ankle.
Even with a bum leg, apparently.
I mean, they did it on Raw this week. I mean, the match with Ziggler was really good up until the end, where it was like everything that could have possibly happened to help Cena lose happened, and he still won. It's like, well,
Yes. I mean, WWE, it's not that hard. John Cena is not, all the people that do like John Cena are not going to turn on him if he loses a match or if he sells. Let's not even talk about losing a match. Let's talk about the fact that he, most of the time, he no-sells everyone's blows. And I think that's the way the agent is told to book the match. It's like, you know, if anything, him looking weak for a couple of seconds might actually start to win over some of these fans that are always going, Cena sucks, Cena sucks, Cena sucks. Because I think the biggest reason a lot of people do that is he's crammed down our throats so much. I mean, some of the most interesting times in the WWE have been when he's been hurt because, hey, Cena can't be the top guy right now.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right. So we have the Shield. Cena is apparently going to feud with Dolph Ziggler, and AJ is now making out with Cena. I assume at some point she'll make out with Ziggler, and I don't know who's next after that.
Well, they'll throw Bully Ray and Brooke Hogan into the mix, and they'll all make out with each other. Because you got to get all the combos in there. And by the way, I'm getting a little sick of all these tawdry affair angles that they're doing, mainly because it really doesn't matter if they're fucking or not. Like, okay, it's Cena and AJ's case. Vicky already got the job, so who cares? Right? Like, there's really no reason to care.
Right. And you know what? We already said, and I don't want to make this a TNA thing, but we already saw Claire Lynch. It didn't work. Bringing in an even worse actress who was only there because Daddy wanted to get her a job because her music career failed isn't going to make it any better.
Yeah.
Again, though, the only much like Daniels was at least somewhat the thing that made it bearable in the Claire Lynch angle. Aries is at least making it somewhat bearable with some of the lines he says during these segments.
Yeah, I mean, his zinger on Brooke. Gee, Brooke, how do you do it? Was pretty funny.
Yeah. Then during the match with RVD, you see where he said, "You're covered in sweat, your hair's a mess, and you're flat on your back. You're just like Brooke Hogan."
So it's like, at least what you need with these angles, if it's going to be stupid, at least have one asshole there to make it at least kind of funny.
Yeah. All right, so that I guess that can lead to our transition to talking about TNA. And if there's a big story coming out of TNA, it's that there's going to be 2 less pay-per-views, apparently.
Yay!
Yeah. Well, you know what? For those that missed it, not Bound for Glory, Lockdown is apparently moving to March, and they're also getting rid of the February pay-per-view. And then apparently they're getting rid of No Surrender, which has been the September pay-per-view the last couple of years.
Okay. Oh, so they're getting rid of the pay-per-views in between the big ones, Lockdown and Bound for Glory.
Yeah. But you know what? We've talked about this before, how it's just such a pay-per-view overload that it might be good. It sounds like a good idea to try something different, and why not have 8 weeks to build up to that bigger card?
I agree. I absolutely agree. People will view it as a sign of weakness for TNA that they're going down, but I'll take less pay-per-views. Absolutely. I think that's something that's needed to happen for years.
I would honestly say, you know what, I've said it with the WWE, get rid of any pay-per-views between WrestleMania and the Royal Rumble. Ring of Honor should I think they should only do their pay-per-views. Well, first, they shouldn't do pay-per-views unless they cannot have a blackout. But honestly, I feel like they only need to get their major shows, which are Glory by Honor, the Anniversary Show, and Final Battle.
Which, by the way, special announcement, speaking of Ring of Honor, I am going to WrestleMania 29. My ticket has been purchased. I'm also going to the Ring of Honor show that Friday before WrestleMania. So whatever show that is, that's Supercard of Honor?
I have no idea because every Ring of Honor show sounds the same, basically.
Yeah.
It's just, I rev Ring of Honor so much, but they make it so easy. Basically, it's like, what words can we put before honor or after honor?
Well, let's see, there's Death Before Dishonor, there's Final Battle's the only one that I can think of. Death Before Dishonor, there's Glory by Honor, there's, Supercard of Honor, so there you go.
I think they did Honor Invades Boston. Or Honor, I think they did Honor Returns to Charlotte. You know, it's like some of the little one-spot shows like that they do, that always wind up getting named, pop up there. Yeah, so getting back to the idea of cutting back the pay-per-views, I think one thing it's also going to help is it's going to, help the wrestling fans in general because, there are 2 less pay-per-views to buy, so maybe they do save their money. The thought process might become, well, yeah, I didn't buy it. There wasn't a TNA pay-per-view to buy last month, and I did buy the WWE pay-per-view. I think I'm going to buy the TNA pay-per-view this month because it is the bigger show for them.
If I'm just joining in real quick, which ones are they cutting? Did they say yet?
It looks like the February pay-per-view Against All Odds, although, again, that name can always move. And also No Surrender, which is the September pay-per-view, which that's the one issue that might come out of that is that's when they've been crowning the Bound for Glory series winner. But you know what?
They can do that on TV.
Yeah,
I was going to say, my suggestion, and they couldn't announce that they were doing this now because, let's be honest, with Spike TV, everything is maybe 1 month in advance for programmings. I would love to see them, instead of having no mega event for that month, doing a WCW-style Clash of the Champions show on either a Saturday or Sunday night that's a big event that's free. Because if you were a fan of WCW back in the day, especially in the pre-NWO days, because the NWO days versions of Clash were just kind of another show because there was Thunder and there was just a lot of options. There wasn't Thunder yet, but don't let the facts get in the way of a good story.
Well, it's like doing Saturday night's main event in an era that includes Raw and SmackDown. It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
Exactly. But if they did it now, TNA only has the one show, so if they did it now, instead of a pay-per-view, it would feel like you're getting something for nothing because you are.
Well, you know what? Hopefully, I wish TNA could do more stuff like that. I don't think it's a lack of TNA wanting to do it. It's a lack of TV being willing to work with them. And maybe I'm reading too much into this, but it actually looks like Spike is starting to promote TNA a little bit more by doing that preview show for Bound for Glory parties appearing on one of their reality shows, which is like the first time they've done anything like that with the TNA guys. So thank God. So maybe
he's going to be the canvas on the tattoo show, whatever the tattoo show is called, Ink Masters or something like that.
Yeah. But you know what?
I can't imagine where the hell else he could possibly be tattooed. But
he's picked. Oh.
How do you know, Pat?
Where else is there? Actually, I was reading an article about a girl that tattooed the inside of her asshole. Guess it's there too.
Oh, Jesus.
Did anybody ever?
We have snuck to a new low.
Did anybody ever see that show?
We're stopping. We're stopping. We're going back to wrestling discussion.
Drawn Together.
Oh, God.
The girl gets his name tattooed on him, H-E-R, and he says, "Where's the O?" And he spreads her, and then he finds the O.
Yeah. Thank you. That's lovely. Okay, back to wrestling now. I apologize for that detour, but yeah, TNA lessening their pay-per-view schedule. I would hope that WWE would follow suit, actually, because I mean, we talked about it. I would even say if it were up to me, and if I had any kind of say within the WWE, and they asked me, okay, Patrick, we want to reduce our pay-per-view schedule by 2. Which 2 should we drop? The first ones that would come to my mind are the February pay-per-view and the pay-per-view that comes right after WrestleMania. So the April, late April, early May pay-per-view, Extreme Rules. Drop those pay-per-views so you have a big cushion between the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania and a bit of a breather after WrestleMania. The big show.
That April pay-per-view you're talking about almost always winds up being a rematch, a WrestleMania rematch for the main event somehow.
This year was an exception because of... this year it was the whole card except for the... Yeah, exactly. Well, I was going to say, it's like this year it was just like that except for the main event, which was Cena versus Lesnar, and that to me was enough of an attraction, but you're right. Usually it is just WrestleMania Part 2.
Here's what WrestleMania would look like if it was in an arena instead of a stadium.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Oh, we have that. So we talked about the two.
By the way, our very own Patrick Kelly, Nick, you might not like this. I went to Bound for Glory, the TNA pay-per-view of the year, but Patrick is going to be attending with a former show host, WrestleMania.
Yes, I'm going with Eric Clancy.
Well, tell Eric I say hi.
I'll be sure to do that.
I said to Pat, and I'm not going to get too much off track, but I said to Patrick, I think Eric Clancy is the only person on the planet I could say I legitimately love and despise at the same time.
Yeah, that kind of is it. I can see why you would say that.
Well, I told James the same thing. It's like the reason they don't get along is because they're the same person.
Yeah. I said that to Eric once, and he said that is, quote, the worst thing you could possibly say to me.
Yeah, politically is the only thing they really differ on, and even that, they kind of state their opinions politically kind of the same way. They're kind of the same person in a lot of ways.
Let me sum it up, and we'll get back to wrestling. We're both completely arrogant pricks, and the only thing that we're completely arrogant pricks about each other, against one another about, is Shawn Michaels versus Hulk Hogan and Democrat versus Republican. Other than that, we pretty much are downright dickheads to everybody about the same exact things.
Funny.
Okay. I'm going to say, I think you and Eric just need to fucking get it over with.
He's not my type.
All right, getting back to wrestling, there is one more story I do want to talk about. And ladies and gentlemen, my prediction is on the verge of coming true. 2013, Jim Cornette adds Ring of Honor to the list of companies that are killing the business. Because apparently, Cornball, at the last ROH TV taping, when things were going the way he wanted, stop me if you've heard this before, had a little hissy fit and started screaming at everyone. And basically, the owners of Ring of Honor said, okay, you need to go away for a while.
You know, it's a thing. And again, I love Jim Cornette. I think he's a really funny guy, and I love watching him fly off the handle and be crazy. But, you know, when every company you've been to either fails or they kick you out because you can't get along with everybody, it says something about you.
Eventually, you have to look at the common denominator in the situation.
Yeah. I mean, he can yell at Russo all he wants, but, you know, I mean, it wasn't all Russo. I'm just saying, you know, Russo's not in Ring of Honor.
Even Hulk Hogan could be backstage with Vince Russo and get along with him.
Exactly. Yeah. You know what? I'm just going to say this. Ladies and gentlemen, go look at any interview Vince Russo has done since becoming a born-again Christian. I don't want to get dragged into that because I'm sure that's a whole other topic. But what has that guy done since becoming a born-again Christian? Admitted he was wrong about the way he mocked JR. He has repeatedly made comments basically admitting that he made mistakes and says about his time in WCW, I was burned out, I shouldn't have taken the job, but I thought it being a new challenge, it would remotivate me. You know what? Vince Russo is an adult. He is open and honest and admits when he's fucked up. Jim Cornette thinks he's fucking God and thinks he's never done anything wrong and is convinced that the biggest problem is not everyone listens to him. For every valid point this guy makes, it's taken away from by him repeatedly grinding the same old axes. Any interview Jim Cornette does, you get the list of jackasses. Jim Herd killed the business. Paul Heyman killed the business. Vince McMahon killed the business. Dixie Carter's killing the business. You know, you had a bunch of idiots that didn't know what they were doing in WCW. You know, it's the same old thing. And you listen to this guy. He claims he invented Hell in a Cell now, apparently.
Can I say this seriously?
No.
The thing is, though, hindsight is 20/20.
Not for this guy. No, I'm sorry. Not for Jim Cornette.
You can't possibly, though. I can't go right now and say, I'm trying to think of something. I can't go tell Derek Jeter not to dive for the ball in that game in the series, you know, in October. I can't remember. It was the American League Championship Series. I can't tell him not to go dive for the ball because he's going to break his ankle. I can't claim to have that knowledge now. I can't do that and go back and say that I was smart enough to know that, and now he didn't listen to me, and because of that, he broke his leg. Same thing about WCW. People want to say, oh, they were a bunch of idiots. Well, for the same people who say, oh, they were a bunch of idiots, the same people are bitching about WWE programming, but nobody's predicting the end for them.
Well, you know, I'll say this about Jim Cornette. He doesn't ever admit that he was wrong. This is a guy that every interview is the same, as I've already said. But you know what? And like you said, James, you can't say, oh, hey, Derek, don't dive for that ball. But you know what you can say? Hey, Jim, in 1997, during a broadcast between South Africa and the United States where you switch back and forth, WWE drew a 2.5. It bottomed out ratings-wise. Over the next few months, that's when they really started making the shift to a more adult-oriented program, brought in things like DX, cranked up the more adult-oriented humor and let Russo have control. You know what eventually happened? They got back over 3, and then up to 4, and then back to 5.
And
so, yeah.
7 and 8. And I hated the Attitude Era, but I can't deny its popularity. I can't do that. You'll never hear me do that either, by the way.
Well, you know, that's just it. You know, but he doesn't. You know, you listen to this guy. I mean, Jim Cornette wishes that everyone would go back to 1975. He wants the white meat baby face who never does anything wrong, and anyone who wants to deny that, just look at how he booked Stevie Richards as world champion. And time and again, this is a guy that can't adjust to the fact that wrestling is no longer what it was back then in terms of how it was owned. You don't have Bill Watts and Jim Crockett and Vern Gagne and Vince Sr., you know, who really knew what the boys were like. You now do have corporations, for better or worse. TNA is owned by a corporation. WWE is a corporation. It may be owned by a family, but make no mistake about it. It is a corporation. You're hired by that company. And Ring of Honor is now owned by a company. I work for a major company called Lifetime Fitness. And there is a rule book and a procedure book in place that I can't violate. I have to wear a uniform. I can't show up and whatever the hell I want and argue, well, at other gyms back in, for years and years, you were allowed to basically dress the way you wanted. Because you know what? They don't give a damn. This is a guy that got fired from the booking committee because he slapped somebody. Or not fired from the booking committee, got fired from the whole company because he slapped someone. Yeah, any other company in the world, you know what? You get fired for assaulting your coworkers. This is the guy that got booted out of TNA because he had a hissy fit about Eric Young going over in a match and basically wouldn't stop hounding Vince Russo backstage all day. As Vince is going about his day, Jim keeps coming up to him going, why are we putting Eric Young over? 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 It's like...
Who did he go over? That's my question.
I don't even think it matters. I think it was during that World Global Elite gimmick, you can make
the World Elite? Yeah.
But you know what? At some point, you voice your opinion and you move on. This guy doesn't get it. And I'll say it, the wrestling business will be better off when he leaves it for good. And people are going to think I'm wrong about that, but let me just say this. Smoky Mountain Wrestling failed. We've seen that his style doesn't work when he runs the show. He does make the occasional valid point about things you could have and things you should be doing. But he goes too far the other direction. It's wrong to completely abandon all the old school ideas, but it's also wrong to just try to run the show like it's 1975 because you know what? The world has changed so much since then.
Well, wrestling has changed. It's not, going back to 1975, there wasn't the oversaturation of television that there is now. So booking it that way wouldn't work because that was more of an arena product. This is a television product, and you have to be able to write television.
Right. And you know what another thing is? Our tolerances have changed. What was accepted in 1975, for example, you don't have a show like Law and Order SVU on the air. You don't have a show like True Blood on the air. That was that kind of stuff. That would be pornography back then. Now you know what? It is there. Vince Russo even talked about it, why he made the transition. He said, because people are much more accepting of adult-oriented entertainment these days than they were back then. That's my point. That's all I'm trying to say is that, and so many people on the internet give Cornette all this credit for being a booking genius. What is he booked that was considered great? What show can you look at that says, well, he was the head booker, it was his baby, that's how it all worked out?
Well, I'll tell you what, OVW, by all accounts, was at its best when Paul Heyman had the book.
Exactly. You know what? I won't go so far as to say that OVW was unwatchable because it was a very good show when Cornette ran it. But you know what? That's because it kind of could work as an old school territory. You were kind of booking out of an area that was more accepting of that old school, that Louisville, Kentucky area, and, more, southern